Hey, what's up, everybody? Steve here, Rock Fantasy. I want to thank everybody. Today's a big day, not only here in the United States, because we're going through a major election for the presidency, Senate, everything else is going on. As we speak, it's about 11 p.m. I'm actually using a new computer here, a different computer than I usually have. The other one's in the shop, but I wanted to come on and say that today, November 5th, 2024, is 39 years of rock fantasy. We started out November 5th in 1985. I'll tell you a little bit about the story if you guys want to listen. Actually, rock fantasy goes back much further than that. It shows how old I am today. But I got out of school in 78, worked at a department store for a while. That didn't work out. I started working on weekends selling concert shirts and at flea markets and whatnot, at concert shirts primarily back then, bootlegs, of which I still had some. So we opened up our first store, my first store, Rock and Roll Fantasy, on Route 211 in Middletown in 1979. There's very little photos or anything from that time period. I was only open a couple of months. I was concert shirts and water pipes and head shop stuff. So that was very taboo back in 1979. Nothing like it is now. And we were only open about 2 or 3 months, and we got robbed a few times and had to shut it down. Tried to open up a new spot. Actually, started renting a spot downtown Middletown on West Main. But the landlord found out what we were doing. We were a rock and roll store and a smoke shop, and they pretty much booted us out. So that started me doing fairs, flea markets, stuff like that from, let's say, 1980 to 85. The story is I was working a flea market after going to see the band Loudness. I remember this quite well. I was seeing Loudness from the metal band from Japan, and we had a late night out. I had this old silver station wagon loaded full of rock merchandise. I pretty much drove from Club Manhattan's in Nanuet, New York, about an hour to the Maybrook Flea Market. This was a hot summer day. I remember going to the truck stop and having breakfast and getting in line to get my spot at the flea market. I had an outdoor spot selling the shirts and whatnot. Going there, actually, I might be wrong on that. It wasn't an outdoor spot. It was an indoor spot that we had. My mom and dad were with me, and I was out walking around the flea market while they watched the booth, and I passed out and actually collapsed. I believe probably too many drinks, the hot sun, dehydration, whatever. But my mom is a nurse, was a nurse, God rest her soul. And I was an only kid, and she said, "That's it." Of course, she didn't know I was smoking a little bit and drinking a lot that night. And it was probably nothing too serious. But she said, "We're going to open up a store." So we looked around Middletown, New York, where I live, and we found a spot at 79 West Main Street. We opened Rock Fantasy with a budget of about $2,500 back then. I didn't know how long it was going to last, of course. Who knows the future? We made it 6 months. We made it a year. We opened up pretty much selling records. We no longer had the pipes. We were records, concert shirts, back patches, all that good stuff back in 1985. And we evolved through the years. In the late 80s, we started selling comic books for a couple of years when the big Batman trend was going on here in the States and around the Batman movie. We started selling a lot of comic books. Of course, probably early 90s, I had a girl that came in and helped me out, who I met at Metal Blade Records. Her name was Kara Sprague, and she kind of turned my store around because That's when the compact discs came out, and she was like, "You gotta get these things that are CDs." I'm like, "Wow, CDs? I don't know. We'll stick to the records and the cassettes." And of course, then we did that. We actually got rid of the comic books. Almost went bankrupt with comic books. We made it through the 90s, of course, and people are buying CDs, everything else. And in the late 90s, maybe like 96, 97, pro wrestling got huge here. So we started selling a ton of wrestling merchandise. I got involved with selling ECW t-shirts, which is Extreme Championship Wrestling, which is no longer in business, out of Philadelphia. And I was one of the only few people, I think the first person to sell their shirts in a storefront other than buying them at the actual events. So we were selling wrestling shirts. I got very involved in that. We were doing wrestling cards. We were getting wrestlers to do in stores. We were driving wrestlers around to do signings at different events. And that was pretty big from the late 90s or early 2000s. And late 2000s, we nearly went out of business, accumulated a lot of debt, and we actually sold off our pinball machine collection to make the smoke shop bigger. That was around the recession time, I guess around 2008, 2009. So once again, we reinvented the store. Um, and then we made it through and came out the other side, was doing well. Of course, we moved the store in the early 90s. I'm kind of backtracking a little bit to 75 West Main and got a bigger spot. We actually had a slot car track for HO cars. We raced slot cars in the store for a while back when we first moved there, and then that got replaced by the pinball. So as we backtrack, we had a lot of pinballs. We sold off 90% of them to avoid a bankruptcy, and turned it around to sell pipes. The funny thing about this is, as we go through this many years in business, how you keep changing a little bit to adapt to things. So, of course, we got rid of the records years ago. I remember cutting up record racks and taking them to the dump, or people were taking the wood and burning it or whatever they were doing with it. And then probably 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more now, we rebuilt record racks, and now records are a huge part, vinyl's a huge part of our sales at Rock Fantasy. Another very interesting fact is they made marijuana legal here recently, last couple of years. So the smoke shop business, which was our bread and butter for many, many years after we made it bigger and made a big part of the store, actually it was oversaturated, still is. So we shrunk that part of the store down a little bit. We still carry just about everything, and we have a nice selection, but we cut that down and we actually added more pinball machines. So the ironic part about all that, along with, of course, bringing records back, is how things change and re-evolve. To it was, of course, we also moved in 2019 to our current location at 12 East Main Street, a much bigger. Back in 2019, we could not. We had problems obtaining a lease from our landlord, and it went on for months. It was driving me crazy. And a friend of mine, actually in another business in town, said, "Oh, you're free. Why don't you go look around?" So I walked around downtown, and it wasn't hard anything for rent because the economy was doing well at that time, and we found a spot that was twice the size. That really made me very excited. And of course, here we go with 2019 going into 2020 with the lockdowns and the mess we've been living through still. But Rock Fantasy is it's surviving. I am signing up for another 5 years at the current location. So I hope to at least ride that into my retirement if I ever retire. But I want to give everyone a big thank you for supporting my shop and my different ventures, whether it was pro wrestling or, I booking concerts. We did about 2 years at Quinn's Pins doing concerts. I stepped away for that for a couple of reasons. I wish them all the luck in the world, and there are a couple other places are starting to do concerts in the area. I also help every year, of course, with the Orange County Fair and sponsor races there and help MC their yearly concerts at the fair, which is going to be happening next year, and hopefully some more exciting things coming out of that. I also want to thank the listeners or the viewers of the Rock Fantasy Files, the Rock Fantasy YouTube channel. Was something we started in 2020 and had a lot of different musicians from the heavy metal world that joined in. Of course, Peter Pardo was a big part of it, helping me out with it. And we started doing the Rock Fantasy Files, sitting talking about music in this room, which is my 1990s living room, which turned into my blacklight and toy. We call it the Rock Fantasy Bunker, Rock Fantasy Studios. Spent many a night hanging out in this room with folks like John McAtee from Incantation, Will Carroll from Death Angel, Robin Mason from Gruesome, and of course she's the manager of Exodus and Testament, among other things, and sells merch for a million bands. And we had Andrew Freeman from Last in Line, one of my friends that hooked up a lot of great interviews. We had, I'm going to forget some names because I didn't write anything down, I'm just ad-libbing this as we hang out here on election day. And hopefully your favorite politician wins here in the States. And we all survive another few years. But lost my sense of, but anyhow, so, you know, if you want to write in the comments your favorite moments of the YouTube channel or coming to the store, and we've really turned the store into a pinball destination. We also just added a ton of posters and T-shirts in the shop. We're really rebranding the store as a rock and roll and pinball destination. And we don't just sell rock and roll. I mean, we sell vinyl. We're the only proper record store in the city of Middletown. We carry anything you're looking for, whether it's hip hop or pop or country. We can order anything you need. As you walk in, we get flack. Yeah, we got Lana Del Rey and Taylor Swift and whomever else, but we're the record store in Middletown. We don't want to be known just as a metal shop. And we try to cater to all the needs of the community with that. But I guess this is getting a little long-winded. I've left some stuff out, most likely, but I'd like to thank all my employees. But I probably don't even remember all of them right now, but they were all part of the family. Some, of course, have gone on to do exciting things and raise families, and they all work for me coming out of college. Currently, I have Rose that works for me, and we have Frank that helps out a lot in the shop and works for us. And we're looking forward to serving the channel and serving the needs of the heavy metal and rock and record store and pinball community for years to come. We just added a few pinballs to the store. We just got the brand new Uncanny X-Men from Stern that's joined the lineup. Of course, this year we added the new Elton John Jersey Jack pinball. We've added the Jaws pinball. We've added the James Bond 007 60th anniversary. So if you haven't been to Rock Fantasy, if you're in the area, you can come. You can escape reality for a little while. I know so many people come in and just say, wow, this is like reminds me of something from the past. And it's something completely different. So I'm honored to be able to do something that I love and go into my store and do something I love, not have to work. a 9 to 5 and deal with someone else, but just been a blessing. So I'd like to thank everyone again. And hey, we're going to be back probably tomorrow. Next day, we're going to be chatting about the band Motorhead on the Rock Fantasy Files. Hopefully, I will be at the Iron Maiden show in Newark on Saturday night. So hopefully, we see some of our friends at the Prudential Center on Saturday. Other than that, concerts are winding down a little bit for me. I did a ton of stuff, which I'll do a show about in a couple of weeks, probably end of the year, and at least we did I did a barrage of shows from August through October. So anyhow, I'll see you next time on the Rock Fantasy Files, and thank you, everyone.